In the last video, we continued our first-person character controller series by adding a camera mover, which gave it the first-person effect and allowed us to see a 180-degree view of our player. In this video, we're going to be adding to that series by adding a movement in the game that is necessary for all first-person games: jumping. Stick to the end of this video for a special announcement. Now, let's get started. So guys, this might be the last episode of the Unity first-person character controller series. In the last episode, I made the camera movement script, and I also said that in this video, I would be doing jumping. So this is what we're going to do in this video. You'll have the entire script for jumping. After this, I might make a series on how to turn this into a game. If you're a member of the channel, you'll get this series first, if I make it. Now, let's get into coding. We'll start coding in the character controller script because this has nothing to do with the camera controller and it has nothing to do with the camera mover script. So in the last episode, I believe we made a few variables to prepare for jumping. Like in the header ground checker, we made 3 variables: a float, a layer mask, and a boolean. And then in the header movement, we made 1 variable, groundDrag. So we're going to start off by using these variables. Right now, we're going to start by using the isGrounded variable in the header ground checker right here. So let's go into the let's go into the update section and to make a new function. And this one, we're going to call it checkGround. Actually, let's call it checkForeground. Perfect. So now it gives an error because that's not created. But if you remember, last time I taught you a trick. Hover over it, there'll be an error, and then you can find a fix to it. So because it says show potential fixes, and then it'll say generate method checkForeground. So if you do that, it'll create a new private void checkForeground. Delete this throw new not implemented exception. And now we're going to assign isGrounded to see if the player's on the ground. Rather than saying if the player's on the ground and assigning it to true or false ourselves, we need to create a function that'll do it for us. So let's say isGrounded equals, and then now we need to make a new raycast. If you don't know what a raycast is, a raycast basically puts a lot of rays out, and the rays will keep on going until you tell them when to stop. And if they hit an object, they will tell you what object they hit. So we just have to type physics.raycast. And the way this will work is it'll go through and hit the player, tell us if the player's on the ground because I hit the player and the ground, and then it'll hit the ground to check if the player's touching the ground, and then we'll make it stop because it could go 500 meters off and still say, yeah, you're on the ground because it's not set to going there to going to an infinite direction, so it keeps going infinitely. So touch something, say it's ground, and then keep going. So now we just need to put a few parameters. One is transform.position, because this will give us the player's center, the center of the player, because it needs to start in the center of the player. And then the next thing we'll need is to make it go down so it can touch the ground. So And the first thing we'll need to do is we have to figure out how to do transform.down. Because we can't just type transform.down because it's an error. It doesn't exist. So what we'll have to do is we'll find an alternative to it. So it'll have to do with the opposite. So so how the opposites in math, like opposite of 5, it would be -5. So opposite of 5 is -5. So in math, the opposite of a number is the negative one number. So we could say negative transform dot up because that would be the opposite of transform dot up. And that would equal transform dot down even though it doesn't exist because they didn't create it for us. Okay, so now we need another parameter and this one will be a little bit confusing. Player height times 0.5 f. So the player height we know we'll assign it to 2 units because it is a capsule, so that is 2 units tall unity. And now we need to times it by 0.5 f. And this might be a little bit confusing, but the reason is the player is 2 units tall and the ray starts in the center of the player. So times 0.5 f will bring it all the way below the player to check the ground. So that way, since it's right under the player there, it could check the ground because transform of position sets in the center, then 0.5 would set it again because the player is 2 units tall, -1, and half of it, so 0 at the bottom. And this will basically limit it from going infinitely. Now, the next thing we'll need to do is add a 0.2 f. This is just to add it a little more. So because it has to be a little above there just so that it can take time to go down, and so it'll first start above it and then go to the ground to check. Okay, so in total this will take 4 parameters. So now let's type plus 0.2 f, and then let's add the 4th parameter. Okay. Oh wait, didn't mean to do that. You have to actually add it here. Okay. So ground layer, which we'll assign this to the ground, and I'll show you how that works at the end of the episode. Okay, now we are done. So the next thing we have to do is so there's drag on the ground, right? And when you're jumping, there is drag when you're on the ground, but when you're in the air, the ground drag shouldn't be applied to you. So this code will shut off the drag when we're in the air. So even when we're running and jumping, if we did a drag, we'd only have to do the drag when the player's running. As soon as they leap up into the air, there's no drag. And then when they land and start walking away again, there's drag again. So basically, if we're grounded, so if is grounded, which we just assigned this variable to, then we'll have to set rb.drag, or ground, which is the ground drag, would be true. And then if we're not on the ground, then ground drag would be false. So ground drag would be false when we're on the ground, in the air, and true when we're on the ground. Now we have to write code to do this. So we'll have to type rb.drag. Oh, my thing is giving me a little lag. Oh, there. Now it's typing. Okay, so rb.drag equals groundDrag. And then we have to create an else statement because now it has to stop it when we're not on the ground. So this will just be an easy one line of code. So the else would be the rb.drag equals 0, which just shuts it off. Okay, so now we are done with most of the code. Now what we need to do is we could create something to stop the force of the player, because right now if it would jump, it would have some infinite force because it would keep building up off of the last jump. So we'll make code to stop that later. But right now we can create a few more variables that we'll need. So so the other thing, I'll show you how to fix it right after these variables are created. So we can scroll up to the top, and first we need to go to the serialized field section and create a few serialized field variables. They'll all be private floats and serialized fields, except one of them. That will not be a serialized field. So the first one is a private float called jump force. And then second one will be a variable called jump cooldown, because we don't want to have our player jumping very quickly. There should be some time before they jump again. So the next one will be so jump cooldown is created, and then another serialized field is going to be air resistance. So even though there's no ground drag in air, there is still air resistance that's acting against us, but it'll be less than the ground drag, because otherwise we wouldn't have to create another variable. We could have just used the ground drag for air. So air resistance should be ideally about half of what ground drag is. So serialized field, private flow, air resistance, and then we have to create one variable that is not a serialized field and it's not a float. It is a private boolean. And this boolean will kind of work together with jump cooldown, because after the jump cooldown time has passed, because the jump cooldown doesn't manage if you're ready to jump or not. It just manages the time. This will check after the cooldown is all over, are you ready to jump? So a private bool, which will be called jump ready. So that will work with the jump cooldown, like I said. And then now we have created all the 4 variables that we need. So now what we have to do is to go down to the private void called player input, and that should be created from last episode. Okay. So okay, right above there, H input and near V input. Okay. So now here we will write the something for jump. Now, usually we always go and check for accesses, but here it's obvious that the access will be jump. If you want, you can go and check the access. I have a tutorial on how to do that. I show you in all my other episodes. So, now we will create a if statement, and this will be conditional statements. So, if input.get button jump, and the jump is the axis, so we have to write it in separate parentheses and in quotation marks. So now it comes to conditional statements. These can be like and, or, zor, and many other things. So here's how they work. So let's say your parents said, if you clean your room, you can play video games. But now, let's say your parents say, if you clean your room and do your homework, you can play video games. So if you clean your room and then you can play video games, you would write, if room cleaned is true, then call a function play video games. But how would we write if room cleaned true and homework done is true? So then we'd have to use a conditional statement before we could run the function play video games. So an example in game would be like, if red key is acquired and blue key is acquired, then open purple door. So like if you have a gate that's unlocks to a boss level or something, it's only unlockable after two things have happened. So for this, we will need to use conditional statement and. It could also be on many other like or statements, like or is like if you get the red key or you get the blue key, you can unlock the any random door that takes any key. So now we need to write two and symbols to do and, because right now we're using and we don't care about the or and all. So after those two and symbols, we'll have to write if are we jump ready, because we have to be jump ready because that means that our cooldown time has passed. So we just have to write jump ready. And then, sometimes conditional statements can actually have more than one thing. So, like, you could have more than two things actually. So we could have three things, four things, so a lot of stuff. So right now we'll probably have three things, so all three of them have to be done in order for the code inside of the parentheses we'll make to be true. Okay, just wait my loading thing, and okay, jump ready, and then we don't want to stop there. We need to add two and symbols again. And this time, we have to check if our player's on the ground, because otherwise our player could be high up in the air and then keep on jumping. So, and is grounded. So, our player is grounded. Now, if all three of these conditions are met, and then whatever code that we make inside this if statement will run. So, now that we have understood conditional statements and we have made all the variables and the parameters for our if statement, we just have to create two curly braces and then we can start writing some code. Okay, so first thing we have to write is set jump ready to false. And then what this does is basically it sets the jump ready to false because we've jumped now, so we're no longer ready to jump till the jump cooldown is over. And then let's make a function called jump. And this one we'll make it later. Okay, so then we'll make the function for jump later, and now we have to do an invoke statement. And what invoke means is it means run a function or whatever after something. So it's usually used for time or run a function after this event has happened. So right now we'll be using invoke to reset our cooldown and make us jump ready again. So we just have to say name of, which tells us the name of function, and we'll just type reset jump because that's the function we'll be creating. So reset jump, we don't need to put parentheses there because it's name of. So name of, we never need parentheses. Okay, so now then we need to say what to invoke it after. So we'll say jump cooldown. So after the time jump cooldown has passed, we will invoke the name recent jump. So let's start by creating these functions because now we're done with our if statement, our conditional statement. Okay, so now we need to create a private void called jump, and this you don't have to use the trick because it's always nice to be practicing and typing it out manually to know all three parts: the privacy type, the return type, and the name of the function. So type private void jump. Of course, you can always use the trick if you want, if you're already familiar with functions, but still it's good to refresh your memory in case the trick stops working. So, okay, let's start coding it in our private void jump. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to add our force, our rigid body force. Actually, we're actually going to clear our force first. I'm sorry. We need to clear our force before we add our new force. So rb.velocity equals new vector 3, and then vector 3 takes an x, y, and z input. So x velocity can be the same because we can just set it to rb.velocity.x. Y has to be clear totally, so set it to 0 because we're jumping again. And then z can be rb.velocity.c because it's fine if it's set to whatever it was before. Okay, so that is done. Now we will do the rb.add force, so we'll add force back. Okay, so rb.add force, and then I'll take a couple parameters. And this one, there's actually a challenge for you at the end. I'll show you. So rb.add force, and then in parentheses, transform dot up times jump force, and then force mode, and then you do dot, and you have 4 types of forces. So what one should you use? Force, acceleration, impulse, or velocity change. Let me read each one out to you so you understand what it is. Force mode. Add a continuous force to the rigid body using its mass. Acceleration. Add a continuous acceleration to the rigid body ignoring its mass. Impulse. Add an instant force impulse to the rigid body using its mass. And velocity change. Add an instant velocity change to the rigid body ignoring its mass. So take some time, you can decide, you can pause the video. Now the answer would be impulse. If you got this correct, congratulations. The reason is it adds an instant force, which is one time, it has to be quick because it's a jump, and it uses the mass because using the mass, we've made all these physics, we wanted to use the mass because otherwise it would be unrealistic and you could jump like you're really lightweight. So impulse would be correct. Now let's see velocity change. It might seem correct because we're setting the rb.velocity in the last line, but even though we're adding instant, the problem is it ignores the mass, and that would make us jump really high. Acceleration adds a continuous acceleration to the rigid body and ignores its mass, which doesn't help us at all because it ignores the mass and it's continuous, so it keeps on going. And force mode, even though it uses the mask, it's also continuous. So we would keep moving up and up and up. We wouldn't stop at a certain point and drop down. So let's type in impulse. Okay, so we've typed in impulse. Now we need to create a private void called reset jump. If you want, go ahead and create this without the trick tool. We anyway can't do the trick here because we didn't write parentheses and we didn't need to. So private void reset jump and two parentheses after that, and then two brackets. And here it's just one line of code. Can you guess what it is? It's setting jump ready true. And that's just because after the cooldown has passed, we need to get ready to jump again. Otherwise, we'd be stuck and frozen. So, now we've finished with our code. We can just save this and go back into the Unity editor. Okay, so it'll take a little while to compile all of this. So I'll just skip ahead this for you. But for on your side, it might take a little longer time. Okay, so I've skipped the wait time ahead. Now we have to a few things before we're ready to play. So right now, if you play, you'll see that we're not jumping, and I know why this is happening. Just go back to the start and set jump ready to true in the start. The reason is, even though setting jump ready to true here, it starts out as false because we just created it and the first value it assigns to us when we're jumping, it goes to false. So when we create it, it automatically is assigned as false. So because even without running the jump method, because that's how it's default. So all we have to do is set jump ready to true here, and we should be able to jump. Well, actually, not quite. Now, I'll tell you my recommended settings for the variables. Some of them you'll need to set it probably exactly as I do. Other ones you can be a little lenient and decide whatever you want. Okay, ground drag. We first should match with the drag in the rigid body, which I recommended to set to 4. So no matter what you set to the rigid body drag, it has to match ground drag. Now, jump force. I recommend 30. It moves you up 30 units. If you do 10 to 20, it's kind of low, and you'll be doing a tiny hop. So then jump cooldown. You don't want to annoy the players, so about 1 second, 1.25 seconds would be fine. If you want to test it though, make it something really big just to see if it works. Air resistance should be about half of ground drag, so I'll just do 2.5, a little more than half. And then now for player height, 2. And ground layer will actually need to do something in the ground. So we'll have to, we see we have 5 layers. We'll add a layer here and we'll use user layer 6 actually. And this one will be named ground. Oh, wait, actually, we should probably do this in the ground thing because we need to assign it there. So let's do it there. So we'll call this ground and enter, hit enter, and then we'll set the layers for ground to the ground layer, and then it should work for the player. So set the layer. The ground is there. Ground layer should be ground, and now it should work. Perfect. So now let's try this, and we should be able to jump. Oh wait, I just need to do one more thing before we're able to jump. Just hang on with me for a second. Okay, go back to ground, and we need. It appears we haven't assigned it the ground layer. It's just there, so we need to assign it here to ground. And now if we play, it should work. Okay, let's play. And you see, we are able to jump. So it looks like there is no cooldown, but just set it to about 10 seconds. You'll see that there's a huge difference. There'll be a lot of cooldown here. Okay, so you see, I jumped once. I can't jump even though I'm spamming the space bar. And then 10 seconds later, I jumped. Okay, so now we know that everything works. So I think that's where we'll wrap up today. Make sure you save all of this, and I will see you in the next video. Oh yes, make sure you do stick to the end of this video because I do have a special announcement. Bye! Hey guys, thanks for sticking till the end of this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Now, for the special announcement. I'm happy to present the new website, RacingGecko.com. Until now, RacingGecko.com just was a redirect to my channel. Now, if you go to it, there is an entire webpage all about my channel and the topics I cover. If you want, you can go and check it out and share it to all your friends. Anyway, thanks for watching this video. Have a wonderful time!